Hello, y'all. Welcome back to Baylin's Book Club. It's me, Baylin. And today we are starting a new book. But first, what are we drinking? What are we drinking? I have my Gatorade Frost Glacier Cherry. Okay, I don't think it tastes like cherries, but I do think it tastes delicious. Um, this is one of my favorite books of all time, and I know I have like said that multiple times, but it is. This book has really just like revolutionized the way I think, especially since I've read it. This is the, I think, fourth time I've read this book, and I was at very different ages every time I read it, and I really feel like that adds to how much it means to me and how much I understand the book. You feel me? I also chose this book because it is Mexican American History Month, and especially with everything that is going on, we need to uplift our Mexican Americans. Um, so let's get started. Before I get into the book, I do want to give some background on Sandra Cisneros herself because I think she's really inspiring and cool, to be honest. And if you are able to read any of her other works, I think you should. She was born in Chicago, and she is the only surviving daughter of seven siblings, which is pretty sad. She had to grapple with her Mexican American culture, and her parents were born in Mexico. They have Mexican values, but she was born in the United States, and though she knows her culture, the United States is what she knows. So she kind of had to grapple with, which one do I go with? Which one do I have to choose to be more important? And what she found is that you can choose which one is more important at different parts of your life, and it can get you where you need to go, right? And so through her writing, she delves into sexuality, the meaning of struggles of being a woman of color, specifically a Hispanic one. We're really gonna, hone in, zoom in, focus in on Hispanic culture here. And she learned to navigate a world that is not meant for people like her. Her work gives a voice to women often forgotten on the sidelines of poverty and immigration, shedding light on just how strong you have to be to make it in either the place that your family is running away from or now the place that you ended up. Either way, it's extremely hard to do and it takes a toll on people. And she was also awarded the National Medal of Arts in 2015 by President Barack Obama. Oh my gosh. So I just love that she was medaled by a black president. She's so cool, y'all. She's so cool. So what is the National Medal of Arts? Let's get into it because me personally, I had never heard of it before. So let's do it. The National Medal of Arts was created by Congress in 1984 to honor artists and patrons of the arts that have made exceptional additions to the arts in the United States. And I really think, again, it's so beautiful that a Black man is awarding a Mexican American woman for contributing to arts in the United States and contributing so heavily to American culture, United States culture, because I really hate the term American, because all of North, South, and Central America are American. So American culture already included Mexican people. It's United States culture, United Statesian culture. You know what I mean? Okay. She was already American. Mexicans are American. Cubans are American. Brazilians are American. Ecuadorians are American. You know why? South America, Central America. Let's get it together, guys. Let's get it like I'm not playing. I'm not playing. Anyways, but now let's actually get into our book. First, we're going to start with a pretty short summary. The House on Mango Street follows our main character, Esperanza Cordero, as she grows up in the slums of Chicago. She describes the people and the culture that she grew up around. And, she turns a simple concept into a powerful testimony. God, I love this book. So, first, let's get to our characters. Esperanza, she's a young girl, a budding author, learning to mature in an unforgiving environment. Then we have Rachel and Lucy. These are going to be her best friends in the book, and they're sisters, and they're Black. Okay, burr. A younger and older sister pair that are Esperanza's best friends. And then we have Sally, a girl Esperanza is enamored with. Then we have Nenny, whose real name is Magdalena. She's Esperanza's little sister. And then we have Carlos and Kiki. Those are her two youngest brothers. Um, So let's get into it. So first off, this book does start with an intro, and I'm going to be actually so honest with you. As a bookworm, this is going to be sacrilegious to say. I usually don't read the forewords or the prefaces. I'm like, if you wanted me to read it, put it in the book. I'm trying to get to the story. I know. I said it was sacrilegious. I know. But this intro, I actually love because I just love this book. And it starts out with this cute little picture of Miss Sandra. And that's where the intro starts, right? So in this picture, she's describing this is a beautiful picture, right? It looks like, the ones you see all the time on the backs of books with the author, which I flipped back and forth between that picture and this picture so many times just to like compare them. It was like crazy. I looked crazy in that coffee shop just going, I just love seeing how people age. I just think it's so fun. Anyways, she describes that this picture is fake though. She looks pensive. She's sitting in her office. It's like, yes, I just got done writing. Take a picture. And then she says, I never even wrote in my office. That typewriter, no, baby. Because there wasn't heat in her office in Chicago. The only place in the house that had heat was the kitchen, and so that is where she would write, in the kitchen. So right off the bat, she's like, "This picture is fake. It's fake. I'm a liar. Life is not as idealistic as it always looks." So we can only guess that since she's living in a house that kind of, only has a heater in the kitchen, which by the way, why would you only put the heater in the kitchen when there's already an oven in there? Put the heater somewhere else. I could heat up the kitchen myself. Anyways, um, her father doesn't like her living situation or her life choices because he's like, yo, I immigrated from Mexico so that you wouldn't have to live somewhere where you need a space heater in your bedroom. I really don't know what you're doing, babe. But on the other hand, her mom is very proud of her. So proud of her because her mom didn't go past ninth grade, right? So any endeavor that Sandra, puts herself out on, especially if it includes her writing or education, her mom is right there to say, yes, do it. Move into that bummy house because if you don't do it, you'll never do it, right? Her mom knows what it is to, I don't wanna say miss out on life because you're not, if it's what you want, if having kids is what you want, if having a family is what you want, then you're not missing out on life. However, if there's something else that you wanted before those kids, well, it's kind of hard to get right back to it, you know? So in some ways, I feel that her mom does feel that she missed out on a lot of her life, so she's okay with her daughter kind of going against the cultural norm of, "Okay, you only move out when you get married, to move into another man's house, to have his kids, to live there forever." She's like, "You know what? If you want to right the wrongs that I made when I was a young girl, I'm gonna let you do that even if it's in a shitty house in Chicago." To be able to pay her bills while she's living in this house, Sandra is teaching at a local school, and she wonders to herself, should I be teaching these children about writing and metaphors and poetry when I know they're going to go out onto the streets and have to deal with gun violence and gangs? And, she poses the question of, should we be fostering creativity or teaching survival? And me personally, I feel as though you can't have one without the other. And we're actually going to see later in this book how creativity is pivotal, is so important when you are trying to survive. So I feel like I'm right. I think our mind needs to be creative in order to keep going. Our mind needs creative ideas in order to have a reason for it to stay alive. You don't stay alive for your job, I hope. If you do stay alive for your job, I would hope it's because you're doing something that you really love. Like if you're like taking care of animals or like an artist or even cooking, you know what I mean? I love cooking. I love cooking. That has always been my ultimate hobby, Reading, I just picked it up, girl, again, picked it up again after like 10 years. I'm not gonna lie. Cooking has always been my hobby. Even when I was at the most depressed state. Okay, do you know what would get me out of bed? Baking something. So I really feel as though our brain needs creative outlets in order to be able to deal with all the bullshit that we have to deal in our everyday life. So, maybe in this moment she was thinking, my job is kind of unnecessary. These kids are never going to need it. These kids are never going to use it. But I really do feel as though she probably changed those kids' lives forever. Being able to simply just go somewhere else and think about something else and use your brain in a different way that's not simply using it for survival. I think it was really great that she was there. And I think they did need to learn poetry. And I think, creating those connections and pathways, it can never be a bad thing. So eventually, through working herself up, getting promoted, getting better and better at what she does, she finds herself as a recruiter slash counselor at her alma mater, I'm saying that alma mater. Yeah, I'm saying that right. Loyola University. Fun fact, I don't know why I thought Loyola and like Toyota were the same thing for like 10 years. Um, this is the second time I've heard of Loyola University in this week, and I was like, oh wait, like those are two different words. You know what I mean? It's like I know they're two different things, but like oh, I don't know, I had to include that little brain fart moment. When she finally is publishing this book, because, when she goes to work at the university, she gets off at 5 p.m. She feels super, put together, super classy, super woman. Okay. And she's like, now after work, I can actually go write. And I feel like a real author. So Jesus, when she publishes this book, her publicist slash longtime friend asked her, how did you do it, Sandra? How did you move from the slums of Chicago to this? And I love this part of the intro, and that's honestly the main reason why I put it in. She says, I did it scared. I did it scared. She said, going abroad to have more experiences for writing scared me. Moving out of my house into a shitty little house in Chicago scared me. Applying for my first job scared me. Starting to write scared me. Putting this book out to the public to be edited scared me. But I still did it. And look where she is now, medaled by a president. And I just want to tell you guys, okay, my New Year's resolution for this year, part of it, one of them, was do it scared. And when I wrote that down on the paper, I didn't really know what that was going to entail. And at the time, I didn't even really know what it meant, but it is the best advice that you could possibly give anyone, literally ever, is do it scared. There are so many things that I wouldn't have done this year simply because I was like, oh, that makes me scared. Oh, that makes me anxious. I'm not going to do it. And I would be so much more behind emotionally, economically, financially, just in life if I just didn't do things that scared me a little bit. There's nothing that you can't do. If you're already thinking about doing it, girl, just go do it. Just go do it. And, that's the end of our intro. So I know that I don't usually mention like the names of the chapters when I am, going through the book, but I just really feel like they matter a lot here. So I'm going to be, switching up the format just a little bit. So our first chapter is the house on Mango Street. And after a life of moving in and out of different places, renting, getting evicted, finally Esperanza and her family have a house that they own, right? And, when everyone talks about owning a house, they always talk about, oh, my big, beautiful house. That's where I'm going to retire, where my kids are going to grow up. Beautiful yard. And, this is obviously how they have talked about the house that they're eventually going to own, right? But when they get to Mango Street, it is definitely not everything that everyone thought it would be chalked up to be, right? The brick is falling apart. The stairs are raggedy, the windows are fucked, and on top of that, there's only one room in the house. Yes, they are all sleeping in one room. And so Esperanza is reminded of when she was at oh my gosh, sorry, hi, I had to do a little cut there. I saw a bug. Um, but Esperanza is reminded of when she was at school in a different place, and one of the nuns asked her where she lived. And so she pointed to her house. It was just above, like, I think a laundromat or something, an apartment above a little store. And the nun goes, you live there? There? And from that moment on, obviously Esperanza cried because that's something fucked up to say, and a nun is supposed to be a non-judgmental follower of God, right? And ever since then, Esperanza just wanted a house that she could point to. And unfortunately, the house on Mango Street still is not that house. The next chapter is called Hairs, and this is honestly probably one of my favorite chapters out of any book I've ever read. It's just an amazing chapter, and it's only about a page long when you put it all together. Um, but don't you worry, y'all. I'm gonna make it take longer. Okay, so obviously in this chapter, she's describing everyone's hair. So let's get into it. Oh my gosh. So the first one that gets described is her father, and he has hair like a broom. Okay, it's all sticking out and everything. And you could just be like, oh, he has coarse hair that he doesn't comb, right? And he would be right. But let's go deeper because that's what I love to do. What is a broom? What is a broom? A broom is a tool. A broom is an everyday tool that keeps the house together looking tidy. It's the most basic tool that you need to do mostly everything in the house. You can even mop with a broom. I've seen the Hispanics mop with a broom, and that shit is crazy, but they can fucking do it, okay? A broom is great for inside, outside. You don't even need a vacuum if you have a broom when you have carpet, okay? It's gonna take a little more work, but you can get it done. And that encompasses her father's energy. He is always at work. He is always making sure that his children are fed, clothed, bathed, and housed, even if it's not the cutest house. He goes to work so he can come home and provide for his kids every day. And that's what we get from his hair, right? Then Esperanza is second, and she makes me kind of sad. She says that her hair is lazy and disobedient, and it doesn't obey barrettes or bands. And so let's get into it. I We saw her hair, okay? We saw that curly, delicious, yummy hair, okay? She's got almost a fro, okay? Curly hair is some of the most active hair you can have. It's always curling around on itself, tangling itself. It's very high energy. So for her to call her hair lazy, it makes you think of like how people talk to her. You know what I mean? You're not going to call your hair lazy if you have a good relationship with yourself. So we can already see that she kind of doesn't like herself, and she probably kind of doesn't like her hair. And the only reason I can think that she would call her hair lazy is just because it does whatever it wants. It's like, I don't have to listen to you. I'm gonna sit here and just then what? And that doesn't have to be a negative thing, you know what I mean? But she is probably spoken to in a negative way about herself all the time, and she probably thinks of herself in a negative way. So we have lazy, disobedient hair. We can also probably see that in her culture, okay, at this point, Esperanza is probably seen as lazy and disobedient because she is not focusing on the things that people want her to focus on at this point. Let me just say that. Um, Next is, I'm pretty sure, Carlos. Yes, Carlos, all she says for him is that he has thick, straight hair and he doesn't need to comb it. Now, I think that's interesting because her dad doesn't comb his hair. So, if Carlos needed to comb his hair, would he really? Would he really? So already we're seeing kind of the divergence between men and women in this book, and that is also a theme that we are going to, be getting heavily into. We can already see it kind of coming up, right? Um, Next is Nenny, and she says her hair is slippery and slides right out of your hand. And Nenny is usually off in her own world, so this really does fit. She likes to kind of slip away from reality. She's usually kind of just not all there. She's very young and just a free spirit. So that's Nenny. Um, and then the last are Kiki and no, it's just Kiki. Sorry. Kiki is the last of the children, and she describes his hair is like fur. And that makes sense. Young, wild child, kind of like an animal, little bit feral because I don't see them interacting with their parents much. And that's from Esperanza's point of view. And so I'm going to assume that the boys interact with their parents even less. So he probably kind of is a wild child, right? And also, fur, again, it seems like he's not combing his hair. So it seems like none of the boys are combing their hair. But I also want you to keep in mind, okay, you saw how, there's a cat here in my eye. Hello. You saw how short that Harris chapter was, right? This is everything I just said. The rest of the words in this chapter are about Esperanza's mother. So let's get into it. Okay. So next we have her hair. She says they're like little rosettes, super curly, but she also always has them in pin curls all day. And so what this means is I feel like her mom is very organized. I don't want to say like anal, but you know what I mean, just very like, because you're already curly hair, you're making it into the perfect curl by having it in pin curls, not for a couple hours, not just while you sleep, all day. Pin curls all day. So when you have that one event that you need to go to, the hair is perfect. Okay. She also describes her hair in a more abstract way than she describes anyone else's hair. She says her mom's hair smells like the warmth of bread right before you put it into the oven. Okay. And we can really see that what Esperanza means is that her mom makes the house a home. Okay. And you can see it, you can feel it in the warmth and the energy of her hair and of her person and of her body. The house is nothing without Esperanza's mom. They're all nothing without Esperanza's mom. Her mom brings the personality and the energy and the love, and you can see how much love Esperanza has for her mom because, well, baby, her hair. Her hair is 2/3 of the chapter. I just really love this chapter, and I really love her mom. And she says, they all do sleep on the same bed, obviously. So her mom's hair reminds her of, sleeping next to her, cuddling next to her, hearing her dad snore, listening to the rain, and just falling asleep, feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling happy. So we're going to be getting into kind of the divergence between how boys and girls grow up. And so the next chapter is called Boys and Girls, right? So it makes me kind of sad. So Kiki and Carlos are each other's best friend, period. Kiki and Carlos are each other's best friend. The boys are best friends. But Esperanza says that for her and Nenny, it's quite different because since she's a girl, she is expected to raise Nenny, to take care of Nenny, to be in charge of Nenny. So she says that Nenny cannot be her friend. Nenny is not her friend. Nenny is her sister. And already we see how the roles are different for boys and girls. Carlos would never be expected to raise Kiki. That's why Kiki acts like a fucking monster because no one is raising him. But Esperanza is expected to raise Nenny into being a respectable little girl. And if she's not, then it's Esperanza's fault. So we can already get a sense of kind of not resentment, but kind of the energy that she has toward her sister and why sometimes it's not the nicest energy. But again, she's a young girl in charge of an even younger girl, and they're both just not in the best situation. And she has a complicated relationship with her mom. She got all the issues. Okay. And unfortunately, one of them is that Nenny is not her friend. And Esperanza wishes that one day she will have a best friend that she can talk to, that she doesn't take care of, that they're just friends and they love each other and they do everything together and they have fun. And that's just not her sister, right? And she says for now, she is a red balloon tied to an anchor. And unfortunately, the anchor is Nenny. Yes. But we must also look at the red balloon, okay? She is trying to float away because if she's tied to something, that means it's helium, right? She's trying to float away. And red is the color of passion, okay? She has so much passion and she has so much love, but it's encapsulated in what? A balloon. Her sister is not getting it. Her sister's not getting that love, baby. She's trying to get away. She's waiting for someone to untie her from her sister and relieve her of her motherly duties that she never signed up for. In the next chapter, Esperanza is going over her name, what it means, where it came from, which I actually really appreciate because one, it adds to her character, and two, I had this book as a kid called Esperanza Rising. I don't know if I still have that book. I'll have to go check my parents' house. Um, and I always wondered what Esperanza meant. I don't know why I never looked it up. I was in like third grade. So I was just like, that's a weird name. But now I get an explanation, right? So she says that in English, her name means hope. And that's the only explanation that she gives for English. And we're going to, of course, over explain it a little bit more. But she says in Spanish, her name means sadness, longing. It's the number 9. You're almost there, but not quite. It's sobbing. It's the sad Hispanic, no, the sad Spanish songs that her dad plays while he's shaving before work, which I find it interesting that he like shaves before work and like it doesn't comb his hair. But anyways, so she says in Spanish, her name was just very sad. It doesn't have a good connotation. But I think what's interesting is I wouldn't necessarily say that hope has a good connotation in English when you look at it. I mean, we all say that hope is some great thing to have, but when you really look at what hope is, it's wishing for something to happen when you don't have the control to decide on whether it happens or not. And that is not very happy. You know what I mean? I hope Donald Trump gets impeached. All I can do is hope he can get impeached because I can't bring articles of impeachment to him. I'm I have no, political standing. I'm not in a political position to be able to impeach Donald Trump. So I simply have to hope. Someone has brought the articles of impeachment against him, by the way. So I simply have to hope that it's going to work. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a happy feeling. However, I'm not ragging on her for this. English is her second language. And so I think it's really interesting. And I think that maybe if English wasn't her second language, then maybe she could have seen that the English and Spanish versions of her name really aren't that different. Though I do see why maybe it sounds better in English, but I will say I think in English we just misuse the word hope. I really do. I don't think it's that happy of an action to hope for something. Next, about her name, she says that her grandmother's name was Esperanza, and that's part of the reason she inherited it. Her grandmother was born in the year of the horse, according to the Chinese lunar calendar, and so was Esperanza. And supposedly, the year of the horse is bad luck, but Esperanza says that's just because many cultures don't appreciate strong women. And horses are very stubborn and strong. And speaking of horses, do you want to know how Esperanza's grandmother became her grandmother? Well, she actually didn't want to marry and have children, at least not at the age in which she was kidnapped by Esperanza's grandfather and forced to get married and have children. Yes, he put a bag over her head, put her on his horse, and took her away. And so she spent the rest of her days sitting by the window, wishing she could go outside and be the person that she was before. And so Esperanza says, I am happy to inherit my grandmother's name because she was a strong, beautiful, flamboyant woman full of energy, but I am not going to inherit her place by the window. And this goes back to the intro and how her father was very obviously unhappy for her for choosing to go to Chicago and live in a shitty apartment and not get married to a man. But this is why, because she has that fear of sitting by the window and longing. Now we begin to start meeting some people on Mango Street, and this is always, the best part. We're getting more characters unlocked. Unfortunately, the first character we unlock is Kathy, and she's racist, and she also hoards cats. Okay, so yeah, Kathy basically just full up comes up to Esperanza and it's like, I need to move. It's getting bad here. Mind you, Esperanza and her little family of brown people just moved in. And so that's basically what Kathy, Queen of Cats, is saying is that there's too many brown people here and I need to move. And so what she does is she moves literally one street up, just enough to get away from the brown people. And it says that every time it gets too dangerous, it gets too bad. Oh, she just moves another street up. White flight, do we know what that is? Hey, let's talk about how people are being so weird about Indians in Texas right now. That's white flight. Oh, I have to leave. It's becoming Punjab country. Have you never seen a brown person before? Are you okay? Literally, white flight is happening right now. Please go look it up in Texas. Look up Texas Indian white flight. I'm sure you'll find what you're looking for. Honestly, look it up on TikTok. Look up Texas Indian on TikTok. I think it's specifically in, is it Austin or Dallas? There's one specific city where they're just being like so disgusting to Indian people, and there's a bunch of houses for sale because the white people are quite literally selling the houses because they don't want to live with Indians in Texas. So this is exactly what Kathy is doing. So now we're still going down Mango Street, meeting new people. And while Esperanza is outside with Kathy, she sees this little girl, this little black girl, saying, friendship for $5. I'm selling my friendship for $5. I'll be your friend forever. And Esperanza, you know, she thinks about how Kathy's only going to be her friend till Tuesday because she's moving away because of the brown people. And so remember, Esperanza wanted a friend. And so she wants to give this girl $5. Now, the reason that she wants $5 is because they're trying to buy this bike off of this kid named Tito. And whoever gives the $5 will have her friendship and a cut of the bike. Okay. So she's a businesswoman. And so Esperanza's really thinking about it. And Kathy is like, yo, they look raggedy. They look poor. What are you talking about? Don't go up to them. Kathy, do you know where you live? You look raggedy and poor. You hoard cats. I'm sorry. Anyways, Esperanza pays her no mind and she goes into the house to grab $5 because she really wants a friend and she really wants a bike, but mostly she wants a friend. And two of the dollars are Nenny's, but she's gonna figure that out later. So she goes up to this girl and she introduces herself as Lucy, and her older sister is Rachel, and she gives the $5 and they're like, great, let's go get this bike. So they go, they get the bike. Oh, by the way, Lucy and Rachel are from where? Texas. Texas. I didn't even like plan that out. Like, yes, I have a script, but that Indian Texas thing, it just like came to me. It is not in my strip in my script. But yes, Lucy and Rachel are from Texas. So they go and they buy the bike, and she doesn't tell them yet that Nenny technically has a share of the bike and a share of their friendship. Um, They'll get to that later, right? But for now, they're riding down Mango Street, one person on the handlebars, two people on the seat, and they're just having fun. And for the first time, we really see Esperanza just hanging out with people that are purely her friends. None of them are her sisters or siblings or anything. She doesn't have to watch over anyone. She can just ride down Mango Street carefree, kind of dangerously because she doesn't have to worry about her sister and just have fun. And it's nice to see her have fun. The next time Esperanza hangs out with Rachel and Lucy, she does bring Nenny, and it ends up not being a problem. Nenny doesn't care that Esperanza took her $2, and they don't care that they have to be friends with Nenny now. They're all getting along pretty well, and I think it works out because, there are two pairs of older, younger sisters, so they can kind of, split off, do their own thing, but still all stay together. So it's really cute, and I really like it. This chapter is called Laughter, right? And Esperanza noted that you can immediately tell that Lucy and Rachel are related to each other because they look exactly the same. And she also says something that I don't really know how I feel about. She says they have big, like, what is it? What is it? Wine cooler lips or something like that, popsicle lips. She said something about their lips, and I was just like, okay, like I get it, they're black. Um, Anyways, she says that you can immediately tell that they are sisters, but with her and Nettie, you can't really immediately tell. But there are underlying things in which you can tell that they're sisters, like their laugh. Their laughs are very similar. They're very like striking, comes out of your mouth like broken dishes, is what she says. And that's one way that you can tell that they're sisters. But there's also another way. So they are on the street just hanging out, just being girls. And Esperanza sees this house and she says, that house looks like Mexico. And there's nothing really Mexican about the house, but just the vibe. She's like, yeah, that house is very Mexico. Um, and Rachel and Lucy laugh because they're like, girl, what the fuck are you talking about? We're in Chicago. And Jesus, Nenny Nettie looks at the house and she says, yeah, that's Mexico, all right. I know what you're talking about, sis. And I just think it's so interesting because it's just like the foundations of what make you a person, like that's really what aids in these sibling relationships because y'all all grew up in the same house. Even if you're not siblings, even if you're cousins that grew up in the same house, it's still really like the same dynamic. It's just like there's some connections that you just can't explain. And that's really the fun of having siblings is someone who will understand you on a level that is honestly just physically impossible for anyone else to understand you on. Next, we have Gill's Furniture Bought and Sold. That's the next chapter. Not much that I want to talk about goes on in this chapter, but I will say it does aid in the setting, right? This is a very poor area. Even the businesses are poor. For example, in this secondhand store, he only turns on the lights if you have money to buy something, meaning that he cannot afford to keep his lights on. period. So even the businesses around this neighborhood are kind of failing because obviously the people don't have the money to give to the businesses. So we see how whole communities can kind of fall victim when there's not enough resources being put into them. And notice how I didn't say can fall victim when everyone's poor. Honey, when we were hunting and gathering and ooga boogieing, no one had any money either, and we were still able to build amazing, thriving communities. This is because of a lack of resources, a lack of care, and over policing. We'll get there, child. But words matter. The next chapter is also another one of my favorite chapters, just in the book though, and it's called Meme Ortiz. In this chapter, we learn about a little boy named Meme. He moved into Kathy's house after she and her cats moved up the street. And one notable thing about Kathy's house is that there was this big ash tree in the backyard. And since Meme is, kind of a more rambunctious child, he gathers all the children and they have their first, I want to get the name right, their first annual Tarzan jumping contest off of the tree. And Meme wins. Yes. I don't know what they were like competing for. Like, are you just jumping out of a tree? Is it who can jump the farthest out of the tree? Is it who lands on their feet out of the tree? I don't know. Mind you, there's concrete under the tree. Meme wins and he breaks both of his arms. Yes, yes, he does. So let's get into it. You might be wondering why this chapter was included, and I have two different reasons as to why this chapter was included and what it means. Okay, Black and brown people love a good urban legend to scare their children into being obedient, and Meme Ortiz is like an angel sent from heaven for brown moms. Okay, do you remember Meme? Don't climb that tree. Do you remember Meme? Put your helmet on. Do you remember Meme? Get off the handlebars of those bikes. Do you remember Meme? Stop running in those shoes. Literally, I promise you, every time they leave that door, don't end up like Meme Ortiz. Do you remember? Do you remember? I just know. So that's number one. But number two, okay, if Meme had an ambulance called for him, she would have said it. She would have described the sirens. She would have described the hecticness. She would have said that Meme went to the hospital. I don't believe he went to the hospital. I don't believe there was an ambulance because they have no money to afford that shit. So, in these poor communities, on top of, him being an urban legend, a kind of warning, it's also a very scary reality of if you disable yourself, you are disabled. Period. We don't have the money to get you back to 100%. We probably don't even have the resources to get you back to 80%. I doubt Meme has full use of his arms anymore. Period. And that is unfortunately the reality in these very poor communities is even if something, I won't say as simple, but something like breaking your arm, that is something that we have cures, antidotes, and antidotes, whatever, medicine, casts. We have doctors for that. It's something that happens quite often. My sister was jumping on the bed. You know that song, No More Monkeys Jumping on the Bed? Well, it comes from somewhere, okay? My sister and I were jumping on the bed as children and she broke her wrist, okay? And we didn't even go to the doctor right away because my sister didn't cry because she's a weirdo. And so my mom finally noticed that her like wrist was swollen. She was like, hello. And then we went to the doctor. So even going late, now my sister's absolutely fine. I feel as though Meme got no help and he is permanently disabled. He also does not come out of that house for the rest of the book. He doesn't come out to play with the other kids. He has permanently disfigured himself over something that was quite preventable. And, we have the resources to be able to help him, but they don't have money. And this is how there are so many disabled homeless people because they already started out poor. Then something disabled them and they didn't have enough money to fix it and now they're homeless. And the homeless crisis is literally awful. It's completely man-made and it's fully just made of people who need help and don't have the money, the resources, the people, the care, the environment in which they can get it. And so while Meme is a little urban legend that moms use to, you know, bring some obedience into their homes. He's also a very real fear that people in poor communities must have because as soon as one thing goes wrong, it's wrong forever. This next chapter is also such a good chapter. Maybe I should just stop saying that because I just really like this book. It's called Louis, His Cousin, and His Other Cousin. So on Mango Street, there's this guy named Louis. Louis also lives with his other cousin named Marin, and then there's an other cousin, and the other cousin is who we're talking about, right? So the other cousin comes to, hi, let me fix my camera. Hello. The other cousin comes to visit Mango Street after a while, and he's in this pale yellow, beautiful done up car, white leather interior. Okay, and it doesn't say what kind of car this is. I'm not a car girl. I'm not a car girl, but I know it's a lowrider. Yes, I know it's a lowrider. How do I know it's a lowrider? Because the police come. Yes, he's taking the kids on a joyride in his new pretty car. Okay, this car is probably worth more than a lot of their houses. This car is probably worth more money than all of these people on the street have seen combined in the last 20 years. Okay, when you get something nice, you want to show it off to the people, show them how you came up. Okay, so he's taking them on a joyride in his lowrider, and the police come, and he says, "Kids, get out of the car." The kids think that he's going to pull over for the police, and that's why he told them to get out of the car. But as soon as they close that door, he speeds off. He starts running for it, right? Now, unfortunately, Mango Street has very narrow streets, right? And there's a turn. There's a turn that he does not make. Instead, he smashes right into the wall. Yes, people start screaming. It's really not cute. Thankfully, he's alive. He just has like a pretty bad gash in his forehead and some bruising on his arms. And then the police take him away and they never see him again. Um, all for driving a lowrider. So let's get into how lowriders relate to Mexican American culture. That's going to be our cute little blurb for Mexican American History Month, is getting into the culture of lowriders. So the reason I wanted to hook onto lowriders as my tangent to talk about Mexican American culture is because it comes from Chicano culture. And you might be like, Balin, what is a Chicano? Well, let me explain it to you, honey. So first, we're going to start with Latino. Latino is a broad term for people that live in Latin American countries. I want to get this right. Hispanic describes people that are Latinos that speak Spanish and partake in Hispanic culture. Okay? Chicanos are specifically Mexican Americans born or raised in the United States with a strong connection to their Mexican culture. So, Chicanos, when they would come to the US, often, obviously, did not have money or did not have a lot of money when they were first immigrating here. So maybe they had enough money to buy the car, but they didn't have enough money to take it to someone if anything went wrong, or to upkeep it, or to customize it in any way. They just genuinely didn't have the money. So they ended up having to start working on their own cars with their own hands. And obviously, if you're working on your own car all day, well, you want to add some pizzazz to it, and you have the free will to do that because it's your car and you're not paying anyone to do it, right? And so slowly we see them bedazzling their cars, zhuzhing up their cars, making them nice, adding like exhaust, making them lower and lower. And so, what they would do with these cars that they were working on, that they had a lot of pride in, is they would go low and slow, and they would cruise down the street, much like what Louis' cousin was doing, and show people their cars, show people their work, show people their art that they made with their hands. And so that is where lowrider culture comes from. When you see them in the movies and they're literally back like this and they're just going so slow, bumping their shit, it's because they're showing off the modifications that they've done to the car with their own hands. And it's become, a culture. And it's really fun and it's really nice. And obviously, I love learning about people's culture, right? Wrong. There's always something that goes wrong because white people hate seeing brown people be happy. So, they started illegalizing parts of lowriders, and California even went as far as to fully ban lowriders. Now, who has the highest population of Mexican Americans? What's wrong with you, California? What is wrong with you? They banned lowriders. I just that makes me so mad. Like, California would be nothing without its Mexican immigrants, and you gonna ban the cars that they are working on themselves. I could understand if you told them, hey, you can't cruise on 45. You can't cruise on the highway. But if they're cruising in the neighborhoods, is it maybe annoying sometimes? Maybe be like, you can't cruise from this time to this time. Okay. But to completely ban the lowrider car and, in a sense, try to ban the lowrider culture in a place where you would have nothing without these people is actually just crazy to me. But that's what California decided to do. They said that the illegal modifications, such as the tinted windows, them being too low, them doing tricks, or them having an exhaust was too loud, it would get you pulled over and ticketed. Jesus. And for decades, lowrider cruising was completely banned. However, they unbanned it in 2024 after COVID-19, which actually heavily surprised me. And I was like, well, what does COVID have to do with lowrider culture? Oh my gosh, I just love connecting the dots to things. Okay, so during COVID, obviously we had that social distancing stuff, right? So people couldn't go to car meets anymore, which was the solution to not being able to cruise, was setting up car meets so that you could just kind of park your car and everyone could look at it. Well, now we can't do car meets anymore because we have the 6 foot distancing thing. So what California did in 2024 is they unbanned lowriders, and cruising culture is like coming back because of COVID. I just think that's so cool. So that's our little blurb about Mexican American History Month, about Chicanos, about the difference between Latino, Hispanic. I hope I was able to kind of like dumb that down for you, because I know even for Latinos and Hispanics, it's hard to explain, and I probably could do more to explain more, but I think that would just make it more convoluted and complicated. Um, but yeah, I think you should really get into looking at lowrider culture. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really fun that they do these things with their hands. And I do think it is a form of art. I know a lot of people don't really see it that way just because it's a car, but it's a form of art. It's a form of creativity. It's a form of expression, creativity. That's what I was saying earlier, right? These people were able to survive. Their culture was able to survive because they had a creative outlet for their brains. And that's why, Miss Sandra, it is a very good thing that you were teaching those kids poetry and Play-Doh instead of teaching them how to dodge a bullet. Because they already gonna know how to dodge a bullet. They already know. Those people, they already know how to work. They already know how to live. But to create something with your hands and with your mind and with your imagination, it just does something to your brain that nothing else can. So that's my blurb on lowrider culture. So remember Marin, now the next chapter is about her. So I guess we're just going through Louis' cousins at this point. Marin is what Black people would call fast. And I would never call a person fast, ever. But that's just kind of the vibe that we're getting, okay? She wants to be more grown than she should be. And I will say, usually when, the children that are described as fast in the Black community, I'm like, y'all shouldn't be shaming the children, and instead you should be asking if they have been sexually assaulted. Like that should be your first thing. Oh, that child is acting fast. What's going on? Have a conversation. And I really feel like that's what Marin needed, is a conversation, because she is making a lot of bad decisions that are detrimental to her life. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily her fault. Her parents sent her to live with Louis, um, and his family because she was being bad. Basically, she was being bad and they couldn't control her, so they were like, go live with him. And while she is in Mingo Street, while she's at Mingo Street, she sells Avon and she's saving up money to marry this guy in Puerto Rico that has no job. She regularly shows the girls, her love letters from this guy, and she's like, "Oh, don't tell anyone, keep it a secret. Like, I'm going to be marrying this guy as soon as I get enough money." And she never gets to, thankfully. I know in her mind, she's probably like, "Ugh." she never gets to marry this man and go to Puerto Rico and probably be trapped there for the rest of her life with a bum because Louis's parents sent her right back to her parents because they say she's causing trouble too. She's being bad too. I She used to stand outside their door in nylons and heels with long nails, just kind of waiting for someone to interact with her. It's giving prostitute. I feel so badly talking this way about a child, but these are the realities of what happened in really poor communities is, children have no guidance, children are traumatized, and they look for love and connection and money in the only ways that they can. She even says that she doesn't really have she's not really of age to go get a job downtown. That's why she's selling Avon door to door because it's just something that she is able to do. Um so I understand, okay, she's also not a great influence on the girls. Esperanza even says that she likes Marin because she's older than them in many ways, which to me means that she's had sex before, like, duh. But why are you telling the children that? Why does Esperanza know that? Get away from those kids. So I I understand the predicament she's in. I don't think bouncing her from house to house is any way to fix anything that Marin has probably gone through. But again, this is the reality for a lot of these children is they're lost and they don't know what to do. And for her, I just was reading about Marin and I was like, she's the physical embodiment of holding your breath. She's just waiting. She's just waiting for someone to come save her in some way. And unfortunately, I don't think I don't think anyone's going to come save her. The next chapter is called Those Who Don't, and here we see that Esperanza is becoming like self-aware of her place in the world and how people view that place in the world, right? So she depicts when white people come into the neighborhood, you can physically see how scared they are just because it's full of brown people. They think you're going to rob them, you're going to assault them, that you're going to like kidnap them or something, steal their stuff. I don't know. They just think these areas are dangerous. And Esperanza is like, we're all brown, but we're all around safe and good. And I don't know why they immediately assume that we're dangerous. However, she does know because she starts out that sentence with, we're all brown. So, on some level, she knows that it's a racial thing, right? But she also says that when she goes into white neighborhoods, sometimes with her friends, well, they have the same reaction too. They roll up their windows super tight. And yes, I'm going like this because it's an old book. Okay. They have the old cars, don't clock it, okay? They roll up their windows super tight, their legs are shaking, they're scared, they feel like they're gonna be shot or something, and guess what? Their fear is more valid than the fear that white people have coming into poor neighborhoods because white people have the means to make anything look like the other person's fault, especially if you're a poor kid that don't belong there. I think a lot of people get this notion that in the hood, it's a thing of like, oh, if you look like you don't belong here, you gonna get fucked up. I mean, that is true in some instances, but have you ever been to a very obviously extremely rich neighborhood that you are not supposed to be in? And they might say, maybe it's not blocked off or gated off in any way. Maybe technically you're allowed to be there, but you're not supposed to be there. The way they look at you, it's like they've got their finger on the trigger and they are just waiting for you to fuck up. Now, obviously, you're probably getting the idea that my screen time is entirely too high. So I don't know if you guys have been on TikTok and I don't know if you guys have been seeing the discourse about villages and children and it takes a village and everything like that. But I want to take that discourse into this next chapter, which is there was an old woman. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. Okay. And just keep in mind, the village. It takes a village. It takes a village. Okay. And then we're going to get into, how that does and doesn't work. Um, so often in poor communities, we hear the sentiment, that it takes a village to raise children. When you don't have money for even a car, and you don't have money for daycare, and you probably don't have money for a babysitter literally every single day, you do need a village to raise your children because you have to go to work. And you might be like, well, why do they keep having babies? So, do you remember how I said that homelessness is manufactured and these communities are poor simply in the sense that they are not given resources and time? They are not given sexual education as readily and as in depth as communities with more money. I mean, even better, off communities are still not getting the proper sex education that they should be getting, especially in this country. So you can only imagine some places just aren't getting it at all. I remember when I lived in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, okay, in the district of Putnam County, I think. Um, in fifth grade, you're supposed to go through this little course thingy that teaches you about puberty because that's either what you're actively going through or about to go through over the summer or in the near future before you go to middle school. So they're supposed to teach you about puberty before you leave for elementary school. And instead of teaching us about puberty, we had a field day outside. We ain't learned about that shit. And then I came to, have I said that I'm in Vegas? I mean, please don't stop me. Please don't kill me. But it's not great here either. I mean, but at least we did get sex education in middle school. But again, it's still like people just be out here fucking like they don't know what it does. So these communities, yes, they usually have more children because they are not getting the education, they are not getting the contraceptives, they are not punishing rapists. And if they are letting them back out because in these poorer communities, remember, the police stations make money by arresting people and collecting bail. So, the more times they can arrest you, the more bail they can get from you. So, of course, they're going to let you back. You should look at the release and re release rates in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because it's absolutely insane, especially for some of these people that are doing violent crime. Why are you re releasing them? But, this is what unfortunately happens in lower income communities. So there's this lady, she got a lot of kids, don't nobody like her kids. Okay, they're bad, she don't watch them, they don't watch themselves, they don't have respect for anyone or anything. They jump on people's cars. Um they're always hurting themselves. They are breaking the trees, like breaking branches off the trees. They're loud. Nenny isn't even allowed to hang out with them because she will turn out like them because she is young enough for her personality to kind of be warped by them. So Nenny is not allowed to go near these children. After a while, no one noticed when the kids started getting more and more rowdy, but with themselves. Well, one of the kids jumps off of a roof, splat, and not even an O, not even an, what was that? No one cared. And by the way it's described in the book, okay, I know in my last video I said that my first impression of this book when I first read it was that it was very juvenile, but I think that just adds to the charm because as an adult, you really know what she's talking about, even when maybe she doesn't know what she's talking about, and it's just really fun to read. Um, I think the kid died. I think the kid jumped off the roof, hit the concrete, and died because I just feel like the way it was written, it's very final. Very final. Let me try and find the page. Okay, I found the page. I'm just going to read the last couple sentences. So it says, see, that's what I mean. No wonder everyone gave up. Just stopped looking out when little Efren chipped his buck tooth on a parking meter and didn't even stop when Refugia, um, didn't even stop her from getting her head stuck between two slats in the back gate, and nobody looked up, not once, the day Angel Angel, sorry, Vargas learned to fly and dropped from the sky like a sugar donut, just like a falling star, and exploded down to earth without even an O. Like, exploded down to earth? I think he died. I think he died, especially since his name is Angel. Well, he sure is an angel now. I think he's dead. I, oh, at least I said oh. But here we see that's what happens when you take advantage of a village, okay? Because we have seen before that there are people watching out for the children. Like that guy that when the girls were walking around in heels was like, "Do people know you have those shoes? Take them off. You shouldn't be wearing those." He was trying to protect those girls from the men that he damn well knows lives on that fucking street, okay? That is a village. That is an essence of a village, is people looking out for your children here and there to nudge them in the right direction when you're not there. A village is not a replacement for parenting, and that's what Miss Girl with so many kids, she don't know what to do, was trying to do, was trying to say, "Oh, well, I'm too tired to parent my kids, so I'm just gonna let them loose and y'all will figure out what to do with them." No, honey, they are dying. They are injuring themselves. They are being menaces to society and no one cares about them. And when they start dropping off like flies, no one's going to care that you're sad either. And this is the discourse that is going around on TikTok, is when does it get to a point with the village? When does it get to a point? And I feel like in our very individualistic American culture, people say it gets to a point when they hear children being loud in a restaurant, okay? And that's just not, just say you don't want the village, that's fine. But if you do want the village, then you can't be mad about the children in the village, right? Acting like children. This is not acting like children. This is acting like feral animals. Because the village is tired, because the parents are tired, these children are basically feral. And what I think is that villages are give and take. Give and take. You know, it's not like you're paying someone to babysit your children, but if all these people are watching out for your children and you know that's what's happening while you're not watching them at home, maybe you do a cookout every once in a while. You invite people to the cookout because you know people are poor and they don't have money and they don't have food. And maybe we all chip in at the cookout and we have a good time and we build our community, right? Maybe, I don't know, you invite their kids over to watch games and watch games, watch TV and play games while you're at your job interview so you can get a better job. Or maybe your son knows how to work on cars, so you say, "Hey, go work on that lady's car since she watched your badass all the fucking time." You know, stuff like that. It's like villages are not just take, 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 give, give, give. It's give and take, back and forth. Otherwise, it's not going to work and you gonna end up like this lady, and I don't even know if she even noticed that her kid is dead. Continuing with the death theme, but I promise it's not, well, this chapter is a little bit morbid, but this is Alicia who sees mice. And Alicia's mother died. And so she's the daughter, and she has unfortunately inherited all of her mother's duties because that's just kind of how things go. Um, and her father forced her to, even though she's a really smart girl and she's going to school. Her dad was like, "Hey, you have to do everything your mother did." That's that. Now, while she's doing everything her mother was doing, her father is doing nothing. You know, mothers, you know, if we're going to be traditional, you know, and, you know, Hispanic culture, it's usually pretty traditional. Kids, food, chores, clean, house, tidy. That's the mothers. Okay. The men are supposed to go out and work, fix things, go to work, come home and fix stuff. Men, right? So there are mice in the house because the house is dilapidated and there's holes everywhere and they're coming from the floorboards because the floor suck. And her dad, instead of validating the fact that this girl is seeing mice while her dad is away at work and she's scared of them and she's studying and doesn't want mice running around, her dad says, "No, you're crazy, you're hallucinating," because he doesn't want to admit his own faults of not being a man and upkeeping the fucking house. He says, "Oh no, bitch, those aren't real." And it even says at the end that Alicia was scared of nothing except four-legged fur and her father. So that means to me that after he's done gaslighting her, you know, if she still is pressing about the fact that there's mice in the house, he's just gonna beat her. She's just gonna get beat by her father if she says that these mice are real. So she simultaneously thinks that she's going crazy. She's getting beat by her father, and her mom is dead. But she's really smart. She takes the bus to school every day. I I hope she gets away from her fucking dad. So we can kind of see as we're going down Mango Street that we're seeing a lot of lost souls, a lot of wandering people, a lot of people who don't know what to do with their life because they are kind of kept from having a plan due to their environment. They just don't know other than to survive, right? And in this setting, a lot of people either go fully, there is no God, why would he do this to me? Or they go super hella religious, right? And so in this moment, I feel like we're looking at a little kid named Darius, and he is more on the religious side of it's just like, God is just God and God is there. And he's apparently this really like rowdy kid. He annoys people a lot. He chases people with sticks and bugs and frogs and things like that. He doesn't like school. He's just kind of like a bad kid, right? But I think in this chapter, she's showing that even these bad kids, they have a yearning to understand their place in the world, to understand how the world works, to understand what God is. And so everyone is outside with Darius one day, and everyone kind of just assumes he's operating on a lower level than most people just because of his behavior. But he looks up to the sky and he points at a big fat cloud and he says, "Y'all see that?" He says, "That's God." And someone asks him, and they're like, "God?" Obviously expecting him to explain more. And he says, "Yep, that's God." And I don't know what I can really say about that chapter. I feel like I've said a lot and also nothing. I feel like if there was hope, like if I could define hope in an abstract way, it would be in this chapter. Going back to Esperanza's name, it's just like having hope for God to be so simple because your life down here is just so hectic. I mean, no kid acts like a Darius acts unless, there's some shit going on in his life. Kids are not supposed to be stressed out. So to be able to look up at the sky and be like, very simply, that's God, I feel like it's an answer that a lot of people are looking for when they can't find answers in their life, whether because they're denied answers or they're not given resources to go and explore the answers, the questions that they have. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just have to be like, yep, that's God. And I don't really know what that means, but so now in the next chapter called And Some More, we're looking at how there are different types of knowing and how that can kind of manifest in people's thought processes. So they're looking up at the clouds again, and it's Rachel, Lucy, Nenny, and Esperanza, by the way. They're looking up at the clouds, and Nenny says, "Oh, that cloud looks like it would be named Angelo. That cloud looks like it would be named Armando. That cloud," and she's just like naming the clouds, right? And then Esperanza says, "No, that's a cumulus cloud. That's a cumulus cloud. That's a cumulus cloud. Girl, what are you talking about?" Then Rachel chimes in and she's like, "No, those clouds are cute and those clouds aren't." So, three different types of thinking here. Let's get into it. Esperanza is sharing explicit knowledge, okay? This is structured information that can be systematically documented. We know what cumulus clouds are, we know why they form, we know the weather that comes along with them, right? We know we know the scientific story that they tell about the pressure and the water and everything that's going on in the sky, right? Esperanza likes science. She likes her education, she likes her schooling, she likes the very traditional form of knowledge that we think of in the US, right? Then we get to Nenny. Nenny is using tacit knowledge again, which is unspoken, difficult to articulate. You can't explain why one cloud looks like his name is Armando and that cloud looks like his name is Angelo, but that's what they look like, and she knows, and none of them disagreed. When you look at babies, when you look at someone and you're like, she doesn't look like an Angela. Oh, you don't look like a Jordan. I was about to dox my name, child. I don't look like my name, I feel. It's an unspoken knowledge. I was just like, you just don't look like that string of letters put together. It kind of makes no sense, but at the same time, everyone knows it, right? So that's the kind of knowledge that Nenny is using. And then for Rachel, she's using conceptual knowledge, which is an understanding of abstract ideas. Something being cute is subjective and abstract. I could say that this is cute. I do think it's cute. And someone else could say that it's tacky and ugly. Neither of us are wrong. These are both things that we know based on our own opinions, based on our own subjective thoughts, right? Um, I just wanted to be a nerd. I don't know. Those are three different kinds of knowing. There's actually more kinds of knowing. If you want to get into that, you guys should look into epistemology. But if you do dive into that, you might be getting into Plato and Socrates, and you might go down a rabbit hole that you cannot get out of. Do you remember how I said a couple minutes ago when I was talking about the village that there was this guy that was telling them, "Hey, why are you wearing those shoes? You shouldn't be wearing those." Well, that's actually this chapter in chapter 17. I thought it had happened already. Oh my gosh, my brain's a little bit scrambled. Okay, I've already read this book front to back, so I'm just kind of like going back and forth. And I've read it so many times, I already know what happens, but this is where it happens. So if you're in that section and you were like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm talking about this chapter. Oops, sorry. So this is called the family of little feet. So there's this family, they have really small feet. They can't fit into the shoes that they have. There are some like fancy shoes that the mom has, and she sees the girls. She has three pairs of shoes. She sees three girls. And she's like, "Yo, do y'all want some shoes?" I don't think Nenny is with them, so she's like, "Yeah, y'all want these shoes?" And obviously, girls love free shoes. So they take the shoes, they're all heeled shoes, right? There are lemon shoes, red shoes, and there are these pale blue shoes that used to be white. Okay, now keep in mind that white is a color of purity. That's why we wear it on our wedding day, whether that actually symbolizes anything anymore. Yeah, yeah. It's up to you to decide. But so we can see that in these blue shoes, they're kind of hinting at taking away some of that purity being worn away over time. So keep that in mind as we're talking about this shoe story, right? So they're going around walking down the street in these heels. They've taken their socks off, so their legs are showing. They're being a little bit they're doing things they're not supposed to do. They know damn well y'all are supposed to keep those fucking socks on and cover your fucking legs, and you're supposed to be wearing sneakers, not heels, walking down the street. A little bit crazy. I can only also assume that they're wearing shorts because they do explicitly say that they can see their legs. So the mom wouldn't be happy if she saw what was going on. The mom wouldn't be happy. Um, and then a man, as they are walking down the street, this is what I was talking about. A man says, "Does your mom know you have those shoes? Take them off. You're not supposed to be wearing them." But they end up running away from him because they're like, whatever. You can't tell me what to do. They go down the street and they notice how men are starting to look at them. They notice how men are starting to talk to them, and they get just a uh, feeling, right? One drunk man comes up to them and is like, "Yo, girls, if you give me a kiss, I'll give you $1." I don't think he has $1. I'm gonna be so real. Don't think he has $1. Um, but the girls want to get away from this man, except for Lucy. Lucy is thinking about that dollar. They have to pull her away from this drunk man, right? And they end up doing that. And they take off the shoes because they are tired of being beautiful, right? And I feel like this chapter shows how rushing into adulthood, it's just not the right thing to do. You know what I mean? It's really not where you want to be unless you need to be there. And every kid has to learn that at some point. And these girls unfortunately learned it being catcalled in some heels that they weren't supposed to be wearing. I'm not saying it's their fault at all. They're literally shoes. Like you're weird. Um, but they had to learn, hey, maybe adulthood, maybe womanhood still is not for us yet because that wasn't too fun. And then they go back home, right? And I just did want to speak on, I know in Black culture we have the trope of like, oh, if you wear red, you're fast. If you wear red nails, you're fast. If you have like long straight hair, you're fast, or something like that if they're too young. So I can only assume that in Hispanic culture maybe this heel thing is kind of like their version of like you're fast. I don't know what the right words for that would be, but I assume they also have, other rules like that. In this next chapter, we're kind of shifting gears to show why adulthood doesn't fit Esperanza, and she still kind of has these juvenile wants and juvenile views of the world. So this chapter is called Rice Sandwich. So at school, Esperanza is jealous of the kids that get to eat in the canteen because usually what happens is they go to school and, they get all their schooling done and then they come back home to eat lunch. I'm guessing because the school doesn't provide lunch, because even the people in the canteen are like bringing their food from home to go eat in the canteen because their houses are too far away. And so they have to like wait for their parents to come pick them up, I think is basically what's happening. Esperanza is not eligible to eat in the canteen because she can walk home. Um, but she asked her mom one day, she's like, "Hey, do you want to pack me a lunch for school, mom? I would really like to eat in the canteen." And her mom says, "You children just love making more work for me, don't you?" I said, "Oh." She kind of just asked for a sandwich. But of course, her mom does it anyway. You know those kinds of moms that will complain but still do it, right? And Esperanza was thinking to herself, like, yeah, of course you said yes. You'll see me less and less and you'll like me more. And then maybe when I come home at 3 p.m., you'll actually miss me. And you'll be happy that I'm here after a long day. And that's just like so sad. And again, we can see Esperanza's complicated relationship with her mom. She obviously really loves her mom and really wants her mom's attention, but her mom, it seems like maybe she's overworked, overstimulated. She doesn't have, the resources she needs to fully take care of her children as she would like to. She's in this kind of crappy house. We don't know her backstory, but we do know that there are many instances in which she is not a good mom to Esperanza, and this is one of them. And we can see the effects of her not really being an emotionally present mom because Esperanza is just hoping that her mom will be happy to see her after a day at school. And that's like really sad, right? So she brings her lunch and she goes up to it's like a Catholic school, like a private Catholic school, I'm guessing, because she has to go ask the nun permission to go eat in the canteen. And the nun is like, "Baby girl, I know you live close to the school. No, you're not eligible to live in the canteen. I mean, live to eat in the canteen." But Esperanza's mom wrote a note and it says, "Please let Esperanza eat in the lunchroom because she lives too far away and she gets tired. As you can see, she is very skinny. I hope to God she does not faint." I think this letter is really funny because you ain't have to do all that. As you can see, she's very skinny. You packed her a rice sandwich. Maybe it's your fault. She's skinny. I don't know. Like, you didn't have to say that. The nun reads the note and she's like, Girl, I bet I can see your house from here." She says, "Stand on these boxes and point to your house." Now, you actually can't see Esperanza's house from there. But we remember the last time a nun looked at her home while she was pointing at it. And so Esperanza doesn't want to point at her house, even if she could see it. So she starts crying. She starts crying. She points at a random house and she starts crying. And then it's like, "Oh my God, just eat in the fucking canteen, bitch. But after today, you cannot eat in there because you are not eligible." And so she goes in there crying because she's embarrassed and she thinks that, this ended up being a bad idea. And instead of having a fun time in the canteen with all the kids that she thought were cool, they're all staring at her because she's crying while eating a cold rice sandwich. Not a good day. But there are some days where you have to learn that, the grass is not always greener on the other side. In the next chapter, Esperanza and her family go to her little cousin's baptism, which I think is really cute. I know that Hispanic culture and Black culture are not exactly the same, but I just think what we do at church and what we do at parties and cookouts are very similar. And I just think it's really funny. The baby that's passed out on some random person's bed, all the people getting drunk till 3 a.m., even though it's technically someone's sixth birthday party. It adds to it, right? So they're in the basement of the church, I think, and her mom is getting hella drunk. Esperanza says that her mom suddenly got sick after she was dancing and her face is all like flushed, but no one's really paying attention to her, and that's because her mom is drunk and all the other adults know she's drunk and she's going to be just fine, right? And Esperanza wishes that she could dance. She wants to go dance like the other girls. She's even wearing a pretty dress, but what she's not wearing are pretty shoes, right? And we see that shoes have a lot of symbolism towards age and towards maturity and towards sexuality, right? In this book. And so she's not wearing heels. She's not going to dance. She doesn't feel pretty. She doesn't feel like a woman. She doesn't feel like she will look desirable on the dance floor because she has these clunky brown shoes. Okay. So we can see that she's in between the stages of becoming a woman and still being a child, right? But one of her uncles comes and pulls her up and is like, "Girl, you're going to dance." You're gonna dance, let's go. And she starts spinning and doing all the moves correctly, and she kind of goes carefree, right? And she says that when she stops dancing, everyone's clapping, and her mom is looking at her like she's proud to be her mom. And I can only imagine, especially after the last chapter, how amazing that felt because she was just wishing that her mom would simply be happy that she was back home after school. And now she's like, oh, like I'm dancing, I'm becoming a woman, and I'm making my mom happy. And she says twice that there is a boy that saw her dance. He saw me dance. He saw me dance. So we can see that Esperanza is growing up. She will get there eventually. She's starting. I think this is exactly the point where it's symbolizing, like, okay, the clunky shoes, they're kind of not fitting her anymore. She's looking around at the gazes of men. She's dancing. She's starting to grow up. Not when she was wearing those heels. Our next chapter is called Hips, and it does, in a way, remind me of the hair chapter, and I really like this chapter. So, Slay, all the girls are playing outside, they're doing double dutch, and so they're making up their like double dutch rhymes. I actually have never I've never double dutched. Can you tell? I cannot do that shit. I think it's like one of the coolest things ever if you know how to do that. Like, I would genuinely probably die, probably just trip and like right on my face, babe. And it would really hurt. They start rhyming about hips. And I was gonna read it, but it's kind of like an ugly rhyme. It doesn't really rhyme. It's like kind of bad. So they start rhyming about hips. They start talking about what dances they'll do when they get hits, like the bachata, cumbia. There was another one. But they start talking about just what they would do if they finally had hips, when they finally get their hips, right? And so we're seeing that these girls are getting to the age where they're in their tweens. Their bodies are not growing up with their brain just yet. I don't think any of them have really started going through puberty yet, but their minds are kind of going into that place of like, well, what is it like to be a woman? I think I'm ready to get there. Newsflash, girls, I'm 23 and I just had to buy a new bra because my titties got big. So I don't know when it stops, girls. I don't know when it stops, girls. I don't know when you fully become a woman. It's not at 23 though, so it's definitely not at like 12. Y'all still have at least 10 years. So sorry. Um, but do you remember how I said that Nenny is often in her little world? Okay, so I think that even out of like all of the girls, Nenny is still the youngest, even given Rachel and Lucy. I don't think they're the same age. I think Nenny is still even younger, right? And so she's not worried about hips. She's singing random little rhymes that have already been made up, and they're telling her, like, Nenny, like, you're supposed to think of something yourself. Like, we're all, bring some originality, ho. We're all thinking of these rhymes ourselves off the cuff. Stop bringing that old 90s bullshit. No. Then she decides to go with a really disturbing rhyme. Instead, she says, engine, engine number nine, running down Chicago line. If the train runs off the track, do you want your money back? Do you want your money back? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. And basically she's saying, oh, if you die on the train, will you really want your money back? Will it matter? And Lucy and Rachel are like, Esperanza, get your fucking sister. Like, what the fuck is she talking about? And Esperanza is trying to tell Nenny to shut the fuck up. But Nenny, she's off in her own little world. Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. So we see that three-fourths of the girls are maturing and worrying about things like hips and heels and legs and hair. And Nenny is in her own little world. But that is where we're going to have to leave it today. We are basically like right in the middle, y'all. So we have one more video to go. So join me in 2 weeks to finish The House on Mango Street for Mexican American History Month. I think y'all should do, again, more research on lowriders, more research on anything that I haven't really delved into. But more than that, I really think that you guys should just get this book. This book is a work of art. As much it is fit as it is fiction, it is also an autobiography. It's a testimony. It's a voice to immigrant voices that don't get to speak. And I just think everyone at some point should read this book, especially if you live on the West Coast. If you live on the West Coast, you need to You need to do it, Ho. You need to do it. Continue to do research and celebration for Hispanic Heritage Month. Support our Hispanic community, especially now with all the ICE raids and the bullshit and the genuine Holocaust that is going on. It's really scary times for everyone, but especially for them. And it's just gotten really disgusting and they're ramping it up, and we all know why. It's the exact time. They don't want you to celebrate and they don't want you to get to know these people. So that's exactly what you should do. In the meantime, stay literate, y'all, and I will see you in 2 weeks.